Okay, I'm here this morning in the home of Debra Soliz in Davis, California. Debra's been my customer for, we just figured about just slightly more than 4 years, and so I'd like you to just kind of listen to her story. You're on, Debra.
Okay. Where to begin? I was 15 at the time that I had a diving accident that put me in this wheelchair. That's been more than 40 years ago. At that time, I lived with my mom and my brother, and I was in high school. I was a freshman. And so I was rehabbed at Rancho Los Amigos and learned all about, about pressure sores, and that one never wanted a pressure sore. They even took us through what was called the pressure sore unit, so we could see people with pressure sores so that we knew we never wanted a pressure sore. They talked to us about pressure relief. We worked with physical therapists to get the right cushion for one, and at that time I was sitting on a sponge cushion, and that was sort of modified so that it went sort of in at the back, sort of concave. And I sat on one of those sponge cushions for nearly all those years. And so at the time of my injury, I was rehabbed at Rancho Los Amigos. I stayed there for about 4 months, learning all about what it is to be a quadriplegic, because I broke my neck and injured my spinal cord very high at the C4, C5 level. So I'm paralyzed kind of from chest all the way down. I do have the ability to move my arms, but I can't really use my hands, and so I use this what's called a ratchet hand splint to allow me to write and brush my teeth and put on my own makeup, and so it's served me very well. In fact, this ratchet hand splint and this electric wheelchair, and later I'll talk about this cushion, have made all the difference in my life that has allowed me to go on and maintain independence, which was really important to me. So after my injury, I finished high school, something I didn't want to do. My mother sort of pushed me, literally pushed me, including my wheelchair, to high school. I had given up. I was depressed. I really didn't want to live anymore. But I finished high school, and the plan was that I would always go to college. So I did that, and I got a degree in psychology and psychobiology. And soon after that, I decided that I really wanted to be a social worker, and I really wanted to help people, and maybe even people like myself, to sort of get through their feelings about being disabled, and to know and maybe use myself as an example that they could have a high quality of life. So I went to San Diego State University. I got my master's in social work, and that was in 1980. And I've worked as a social worker for 25 years. My most recent job was as a perinatal social worker. That's someone that works with women who are pregnant and their families. And I did that for 13 years, and that actually was, of all my jobs, that was my favorite job. And I'd be there today if it hadn't been for the fact that after 40 years of being in this chair, I got my first pressure sore. Again, it was probably related to the number of hours, no doubt, that I was in this wheelchair every day, which was between 14 and 16 hours a day. I was a very dedicated social worker. I worked sometimes 10 hours a day because I was working with women who were in great need of services, so much so that some of them would lose their babies, and I could, they would either lose them through death or through CPS, and I was in a position to help them. And I loved my job. It was very intense. And it's, it's social workers experience what's called burnout, and I was overworking myself. So certainly that was part of the reason that I, got this first pressure sore. But it was also because my cushion had broken down and I hadn't paid attention to it. I have no sensation on my bottom, and so when it breaks down, that means it starts getting hard in spots. And so I was sitting on this hard compressed sponge, and that contributed greatly to the formation of this pressure sore. So I continued to work, and this pressure sore was getting larger, and I started having visits by a home health nurse. I was now down in bed, trying to see if this pressure sore would go away with taking all the pressure off. So I was down in bed, and I had visiting nurses coming out to see me, and they were saying that it was gradually improving, and I might be able to start a seating program where you get up for a certain time every day, for like an hour the first day, maybe an hour and a half the second day, and just watch how the pressure sore is doing. But in the end, I wasn't getting better. I was very, very sick. I was very pale. So I went in to a spinal cord injury clinic. My doctor saw me. She said, you look like you're at death's door. And the truth is that I was. And so I had surgery. And the doctor saw me, sort of pushed on my wound, and it just spilled with pus, meaning that I was not healing. I was getting worse because it was decaying. Truly, it was dying. My skin was dying from the inside out, so you couldn't really see it on the outside, but it had dug a pretty deep hole in the inside. So I was considered at that point a level 4 pressure sore, and it was very grave. And I was told I would have to be in bed for months. I would have to have surgery and be in bed for months, if not a year or so. I was devastated. I didn't want to believe it. I was in total denial. I lost my job. I lost this job that I loved. I was working toward getting a license in clinical social work so that I could go on to be a psychotherapist. And I just thought, all this work I'd done, all these dreams I had, and now they just seemed unattainable now. It just seemed like everything was lost. They were telling me then, when I was able to get back up again, I would have to do that seating where I could just be up an hour at a time and then an hour and a half, and they would see how it went. And if it didn't go very well, I'd have to be back down in bed. I was probably more depressed at that time than I was when I was first injured. I really did think about, not suicide, but I thought about really not wanting to live because my quality of life had just gone away. So I had a caregiver at the time, and she saw my depression, and she was really concerned, and she started looking on the internet for anything that would help my situation. And she came across this cushion called Ease, and she explained how she thought it worked, that it would change my pressure on my bottom every so many minutes, but every 9-10 minutes, and it would shift my weight. And she thought, maybe it's something to try. And so I contacted the organization. I actually spoke to Rex, and he said, well, you sound like a good candidate, and let's try this. And so I began to use it, and I noticed immediately that, because I remember when I was in pain, so much pain when I tried to sit, that I would just sweat profusely. I would sweat and sweat and sweat. I would have towels around me all the time, just because of the pain that I couldn't feel, but my body was telling me that I was just in great pain because of the sweating. So when I tried this cushion, this ease cushion, the sweating, like, it almost disappeared. And I was seeing a plastic surgeon at the time. He wanted to keep track of my wounds after surgery, and he wanted to make sure they were going okay. And he just said, yeah, you're doing good, you're staying off your bottom. And I was almost afraid to tell him that I wasn't staying off my bottom. I was sitting up with this ease cushion. So I really didn't tell him, because up until then I'd been considered sort of a non-compliant patient. I was told again and again that I needed to be down, and I could not be sitting up. And I just saw my world around me crashing. The people at my clinic where I worked, they were holding my job for me. They held my job for me for a year, but they couldn't hold it anymore. And so I lost that, and I was losing more and more. I was a parent of adult children, but still in need of my support. And there was, and I guess the thing I felt most of all, I just began to feel useless, because I wasn't helping people anymore. I mean, that's what I was meant to do, and I wasn't helping anybody anymore, and I didn't feel like I could even help myself. So this ease cushion, I started using it, and I eventually told my plastic surgeon, because he goes, how many hours are you sitting a day? I go, well, you know what, I don't really want to tell you, because I know you're not going to believe me, and I know you're going to scold me and tell me that I should be down in bed more. I said, but the truth is, I'm sitting between, at first between 8 and 10 hours a day. He goes, but your sores look so good. And I go, well, I know, and I feel good. And I began to tell him about this ease cushion and how it alleviated the pressure, because he kept saying, now remember, what gives you pressure sores is pressure. That's why it's called pressure sores. You have to get off the pressure. You have to be in bed. And then it just eluded him why it was that my sores were so good, given that I was sitting up for so long. And so I told him about the cushion, and we began to talk about whether I should be closing my wounds or not. And everybody recommended, even someone related to infection, and all the people that I talked to, plastic surgeon, doctors, rehab doctors, everyone was kind of in agreement that I should be closing these sores, even though they knew that there was like a 70-75% chance that they would reopen again. But this one plastic surgeon said, you've got to go with what works, and it looks like this cushion has done a miraculous reformation of your life. And it was certainly true. And I will say without any reservation that truly this ease cushion saved my life. And it saved my life not only because I'm